I'm thinking I can get a stairway in this opening today. Let's give it a try. If you watched the first video, I got these stringers cut and these feet cut, and I've been coating them in copper coat ever since. Those soaked in it, and these have had it painted on these surfaces that matter. Today, I got a bunch of miscellaneous parts to cut. I'm going to show you that in a second. And then we're going to assemble this in place outside. Here's my list right here. I have alignment cleats. Those just get screwed to the top tread surface on the stringers there. And then with them in place, I can push the header up until it touches them and clamp it in place, and get my 3 big spacks going through the back of that into the top of the stringer. I'll show you all that when it comes to it. And then this header gets rested on this notch, but that doesn't get cut until I get everything in place and see what kind of an angle I need to put the stairway in. If you watch the first video again, everything is crooked out there. The blocks are at slightly different heights from side to side, and they're skewed from front to back. Everything's a little diddly-wampus, and I gotta make the stairway look right in the opening. So what I'm gonna do is I got that on here. I'm gonna rest the 2 stringers on there, get the header attached to just 2 of the stringers, and then put a spacer board on it and get that as square as I can get it. And I'll be resting it on temporary spacers, or temporary little things that go on here that'll hold that header in the right place. And then I'll take a scribe and mark where those need to be cut, and I'll cut whatever angle on the table saw down to this depth, and then cut that notch out. And then that header will be flush against the backs of these, but it'll be whatever crookedness it needs to be for this opening. Sounds a little complicated, but it's not really. Hopefully this opening is not too bad, and it looks funny, but it is what it is. I gotta get it to fit in what's there. So, okay, back to these. We got spacers. The stairway itself comes 4 13/16 above the top of the blocks. I'm going to cut spacers at that height and put a level going across, and then I'll slide these up until they just touch the level and put some temporary screws, get them screwed in place. And then all that stuff that I just mentioned, put the little thing that's going to catch the header and blah, blah, blah. So, what else do we got here? 2 12-inch temporary supports. Those are the supports that go, let me show you that. They go right here. All they are is just a piece of wood that gets a couple screws here, and then I'll rest the stairway on top of that while I scribe that top. We got 1 header. I got a measure for that. That's going to be the distance between the blocks up by the top there. Spreader, whatever the distance is between the 2 side stringers, these right here, that exact distance, that's the width that this is going to be, this spreader, and that'll help get everything nice and square. That'll stay in until I need to put that last stringer in place, and then it'll get reattached and attached to that last stringer as well, and it'll sit there until I get down there with all of the treads and risers, which are waiting over there. Okay, and then angle brace. I just thought of that this morning. I'm not exactly sure how this is going to line up. I think I'm going to need a spacer, but it shouldn't be too hard. I got a piece of 2x4 laying around, So if I put a couple spacks into it down on the brace here and the retaining wall brace, and then run it up at an angle and then bolt it to the center stringer, that'll stiffen things up greatly, and I think that'll just help the overall stairway. It's not really needed, but as long as I have the material laying around, it's very little work and it'll make it a better stairway. So let me get all this stuff cut, and I will meet you again out there by where we're going to assemble everything. I got everything that I can cut right now cut, except for the header. I need the best wood I can get. We got a few checks right here and on the end. Yeah, that might split right open. A little malfunction here too. I need 46 inches, so if I come from right here over to here somewhere, that might be the ticket. I do not want this knot right in the middle though. If my stringer is attached right here, that'll be just fine. But I don't want a bolt hole going right through that knot. I'll get that figured out. We'll get this cut, and with that, we'll be ready to go out there and start putting things together. All right, I got the header cut. We have a bunch of other stuff to get in place before this goes on. This gets laid out in place according to what's there. So we're just going to leave this here for now and grab some of this stuff and start getting this put together out there. Now you can begin to see how out of whack everything is. If you watched the other videos, you could see that trying to put a straight line across the back here, that's the gap it leaves. So nothing is plumb or square or anything of the sort, and I have to fudge everything to make the stairway look right. So we are, almost 3/8 of an inch off of plumb going across there. I'm going to get some shims and shim this up, get this nice and plumb, and then those mounts get attached to here and go up to the level. I'll have to move this back a little bit. Okay, we are dead level and at the right height. Let me get the rest of these in according to the bottom of this level, and then we'll go get the stringers. So with these in place, I'm going to take those cleats and put them on top of 3 of these, and then I'm going to push that header up until it stops against those and put a couple screws in it. That's just temporary. And then we'll take the cleats off, and then I have to mark where these are and mark where I want to put my screws. The screws coming through the back of the header into the center stringer go right here, and the ones on the sides are going to come, they're not going to be center, they're going to be over this way a little bit. So let's go get that header and the cleats and get that done. And then we're going to take the header back off and we're going to mount it to the stringers. What we're going to do is like lay the stringers in here, and I'm going to go up there and attach all that stuff and then kind of pull it back down. That stuff is going to be incredibly heavy. The header itself probably weighs, oh, I don't know, 30 pounds, because it's treated wood and it's still really saturated. It hasn't dried out yet. So this is going to be pretty heavy. So we got to get it all done in place like this. I'll mark the center of these. And that's going to be for the specs going into these. And then we got to mark the other side for mounting the stringers. Now, stringer location. We have 3 1/4. So 1. Okay, I'm not sure if you're going to be able to see this. While I have this in place, I marked down and up 1 inch. We're going to have a specs at both those locations and one right in the center. And actually, no, it's on here. That's why you couldn't see it. I marked 1 here and 1 here. But 1, 2, 3, those are all going into here. And then I'm going to take this back in the shop and transfer my line down the back and do the same thing for the specs that are going into the stringers. Before I do that though, we have, and I don't have them out here, I'm going to attach the mounts to these and then take these screws out. And then once I have this header attached to the stringers, it's just going to sit on those. So when I go to figure out the real angle on this thing, it'll be supported flush with the top by those cleats, and it'll have 2 of the stringers in, and then we'll try to get it as square as humanly possible. And then I'm going to mark the line on the back of this, and we're going to cut that on the table saw down to this bottom part. So it'll be a notch like that with an angle at the top. Not sure if that's making any sense, but it'll probably make a lot more sense in a little bit. So let's get those cleats on there, take this off, make the last marks, and drill all those holes. And then we can start getting the stringers on here. I should mention this. The bottom edge is jointed and the top edge is ribbed. This was a 2x8 and now it's 7 inches wide. I wanted a nice square edge so that I could do this. I have that clamped nice and tight to there, and then I screwed it in to this board here. Same on that side. Now I can take these clamps off, and when I put this back on with the stringers on, it'll be in exactly the right place. So let's get this off and take this in and get it drilled. All right, this is all marked and ready to go. I got lines on here so I can get my stringer as straight as possible. The cleats that I just used outside, I'm going to bring those in and screw them to the top, and they're going to hang off this way, and that header will be pushed up tight against that, and I'll clamp that as well. And I'll throw some 4-inch screws into it right here to hold it in place. Then I'll put the spacks in, and the 4-inch screws will be left in there. All right, let me get them cleats on here. Unfortunately, we can't do any of that in here except put the cleats on there, because if I start assembling it in here, it's going to be just way too heavy. Like I said, this board alone is heavy. Those are real heavy. So I'll get the cleats on there, and I will meet you back out where we're going to start assembling this. The camera turned off when we were out of a cloud. It got so hot that the camera overheated, or the battery actually, and it shut the camera off. So this is about where I want it. Now I gotta take these cleats off, and I'm gonna measure from outside to outside. I'm gonna cut a board that exact length. I'm gonna cut a board that exact length and screw it on down there somewhere. And then I'm going to jiggle this and joggle this and get it nice and square. And when it is square, it's probably going to look something like this, with a gap, a fairly good sized gap on one side and nothing on the other. Then what I'll do is take my scribe and mark that slight angle that it is. I'll set it at 1.5 inches. So this one will be all the way back, and these will be less than all the way back, and they'll have that angle at the back, and the bottom will be cut right where this board is. And when I get everything cut, I'll cut these down to that line and then notch that out, reinstall these, and then this header will sit right on those. Hoping that's making sense. And then you can see the spacks are going to go right here. This actually has to come over this way a little bit, but I'll do that when I do the adjusting. This is a little bit off. Goes about right there. So I'm going to take a little bit of a break and cool off, and then we'll get that piece cut, and I will get back to you when I start squaring this up. I got back from cooling off, and I measured across the top up there and got 2 boards cut so that I can get this squared up. But I found out that it pinches together down here in the front. So I really can't do that. This is not going to be square no matter what. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to get that back part squared to the opening, and like go back and forth and try to get it as close to even the distance between the front of the wall and the riser, and I'll get it at a happy medium, and I'll try to get these treads a fairly even space away from the wall. I still got to get some nuts and bolts on the bottom part of these. This one's fine, but that one's pinched in too much. So, no big deal. I knew this was going to be a total cluster, and we'll just work around it. Yeah, the gap up here, look at how nice that is. And then Well, this one is pretty even. It gets a little closer to the wall there, and it's about the same down here as it is up there. So what I got to do is just basically move this out and then get the fronts of these even so that the stairway isn't skewed. That was the whole point of doing this up here. So we'll still do that, and then we'll get all these cut, and we're gonna do it that way. So now I'm gonna take some measurements from the face back to there, go back and forth. Yeah, like I said, I want enough room here to get my wrench back there so I can bolt the feet on. You're never going to see any of this stuff anyways. It's just going to be treads and risers, and those are going to be scribed to the blocks. Some of them are going to be, a good deal shorter than others. Okay, well, let me do a little bit of measuring and pet my cat for a little bit before she goes crazy, and we'll get back to this. Okay, I got my mounting blocks cut, and how I did that was just marked where the bottom was, ran it in until I met where this line was going to be, and then turned it and cut these chunks off. So it has a little bit of run in here and here, which is perfectly fine. And I changed how I'm going to do these. I made all of the notches the same, and all I'm going to do, and this is actually how I had first designed it, this first one will be exactly where it was, and the rest of them will be out a little bit, and I'm not going to do that slight little angle. I was looking at the angle, and it was, it was so slight, and it was a little different on each one. I think it's going to work out better this way. So I'm going to get number 1 in place, and then I'm going to put a wood clamp, a bigger one, on one of the middle ones and get that level across, and then get the other 2 in place. And then we can put this center stringer in place and get everything level again, and then it's on to the feet. Yeah, that opening is so jacked up. It's incredible, but if everything goes how I think it's going to go, you won't be able to notice it once it's done. Okay, I got this about as good as I'm going to get it. I got 1 spax in each one of these 2 of the braces. I got just a regular screw in this one, but we got about roughly an inch gap here, and it's pretty much the same gap as we got over there, and everything appears to be lined up. Like this tread is lined up, or this riser face is lined up with this one. It does not look like everything will be skewed. Let's get a board on there and show you. If we put this on there, there's no gap on that side, no gap on that side. It's not like it's at an angle. So, with everything being scribed to the blocks, I think it's going to look good just like it is. That side is about an inch different than this side as far as setback goes. Yeah, and I just used the blocks to do the concrete. So the concrete's skewed. You can't really go by the concrete. But I think this is it. I'm going to start throwing some screws in here. This is just floating, but it's in the right place. Well, let me get a level on this. I've been goofing around with it, so it might be out of level. Nope, dead level. So what I'm going to do is just throw a couple regular screws in there to hold it in place, and then I'll get, oh Jesus Christ, I just got bit by something. Something nasty. Oh man, did that hurt. Ouch. Well, we'll deal with that later. So 3 specs in each, and again, I'm pre-drilling for those because I don't want it to split anything. And then I got to get the rest of the specs in here. I have screws in some of the holes. I'll pull those out, put specs in there. And before I get this other side in here, I'm going to get the center stringer in here that goes right along this line right here, because I don't think I'll be able to get at it once I get the other support in there. Okay, I got a lot of screwing around to do, so I better get started. Okay, got the stringers in place. These are going to have to be spaced as I go, and what I want is this center one to be dead center, and you can see this one is pushing up against the wall, and this one wants to go this way, and it has a curve to it. We'll deal with that later. I need to make a spacer for the nosing and probably a couple others. I think what I'm going to do is set up a little bench over here, and I'm going to have to route the front nosing on the stairs as well, or the treads as well. So there's a good amount of machining to do on the treads and risers. Oh, and I need to countersink as well. You can just throw the screw in there and it'll countersink itself, but that always leaves a really decent sized split on both sides of the screw, and that allows water to get in, and I would rather not have that. First thing I got to do though is deal with these wires. One of the wires is going to have to come up, and it's going to end up going that way, and the other one is going to come up on this side, and it's going to end up going that way. So that's just a few wire staples and maybe a rock or something to hold them in place until I'm done with this. All right, let's get that done real quick, and we'll start working on the treads and risers. Okay, I have this shifted to where I want it. I had to move this over, and I fixed everything in place at the bottom, and I fixed this center one, which was the only one off in the middle. I just pushed this board up against the blocks and then screwed it right there, and I'm working on this right here. I'm going to put this and this in, all 3 of these, and then work my way up. I'm not exactly sure what I'm going to do with that top yet, because like I said, I'm going to be building a deck up there, and I want to dress up the ends, because right at this level it becomes visible. So I'm going to figure out what I want to do with that later. All I did was cut these two pieces. These are like 44 inches, and I'm going to screw the cutoffs up there, which are extra long. Put those two up there, and those will serve as the top tread for now. And once I get everything figured out up there, that will be done at the same time as I do the deck up there. So I got these cleats. The boards hang off 1 3/8 over the front. So I got my cleat on both sides, and the board is measured. What I do is take a 6-inch block and get it squared to the front like that. I just got this on there because it wants to tip. And then I do the same thing on the other side. Oh, where is that? Oh, right here. Put a board, square it to the front, and then measure in between here and add a foot. These are exactly 6 inches. That gives me the length to the closest concrete on both sides. That closest concrete is down there. If you just take a tape measure and measure concrete to concrete, it's going to be way off. So I take that dimension and then reduce it by about 1/4 of an inch, and that gives me my board length, which you can see has some major gappage here. Yeah, this is going to go way in. I don't know if I got enough allowed for on that. And this is my scribe right here. So I'll take this and push down on that pencil and work my way across and do that on both sides. I may have to scribe this 5/8 of an inch away in order to get into these big ass gaps, because that gap is more than 1/2 inch. And I think I'm going to run into that in quite a few places. Yeah, luckily the treads hit on the blocks and not on any of the openings. This one's going to be kind of close. Yeah, we'll see how this works. I'll get this first one cut, and then, yeah, if we push it all the way to that side, this is set at 1/2 inch. This is just a piece of scrap. Yeah, at its deepest, it's at least 5/8 of an inch. I think I'm going to go with 5/8 of an inch for a gap on either side, which is fairly much, but it's still going to look really cool. Okay, let me go remake this, and we'll get back. And, well, once we have these cut with a jigsaw, then I have to round the top and bottom. That's why I have stuff set up out here. And if the back was cut, then I have to round the back too. And I have, oh, I don't have it out here yet. I have my little router with an 1/8 inch bit, which is the same as this, to do that. Yeah, you can see this was cut. These boards are all different widths, so I'm ripping them to 5.5 before I come out here. So this was ripped, this was ripped, and this board, I can turn it around, and the back part of it is covered. It stops about 1/8 of an inch or 1/4 of an inch from here, and it's covered by the riser. Okay, let me change this and I'll show you the scribing real quick. I did not measure this, but it looks like it's a bit more than 5/8. Yeah, my brother-in-law just gave me these leads about a week ago, so it's kind of lucky that happened. All right, let's see how. Yeah, my normal scribe will not work on this. It's too small. It won't, or it's too big. It won't go into them gaps. Yeah, pretty wicked cut on there. This is kind of clumsy, but I'll probably get real good at it by the time I'm done. Okay. Yeah, I'm trying to figure out what goes on in the front, because on the other side we have some major gappage there. See, if I cut right along that line, and especially if the blade drifts the opposite way, what I'm going to have to do is just kind of draw what's there. This goes over, and yeah, it goes all the way back to that point. Yeah, I'll just draw it on there, and I'll have to fudge it in. This one just barely towards the block, but this one, and it may be the only one like that, we'll find out. Okay, let's get these cut and route the front edge on these and get this one installed. And then with this installed, we can set the spacers behind it. Oh, I got to pre-drill the holes as well, so I got to mark for that before I move it. Get those drilled as well, and then get this in place, and then we can space the other one. The space between the boards is what matters, and we'll have a little space in the back, and that gets covered, like I said, by the riser. You'll see all that in just a minute. Let me get the center lines on these marked, and we'll get to work on it. All right, I got the first one cut. Yeah, I wish I didn't have to go that far, that 5/8. I wish I could go half or even 3/8, but I was thinking about it. I don't know how much these are going to move in the winter. If this whole thing moves or not, I just don't know. I'm going to leave it the way it is. We're going to go with 5/8 the whole way. I got to get this rounded, and I think I'll round these two corners regardless. It's just going to take a couple seconds. I have a couple cleats on the table, so I can run the bigger bit on these two edges, and I believe that's a 1/4 inch on this back, and then the one edge on the other one. We'll do that, and we'll see what this looks like. It was supposed to rain last night, so I got everything put away, and then it didn't rain. So I got to get everything back out here again. This is what I got done yesterday, and it looks about what I expected. Yeah, I kind of like that. Just curved to meet whatever's here. And I think the worst spot on the entire wall is this gap right here. I'm not going to be hitting, well, I'll be hitting it with a riser right here, and then that's it. So, oh, and when we get up to here, but like I said, I don't think I'm going to put the riser in on this one, and I'm going to temporarily screw something down for the top tread. I just need to get this ready for the work that's going on over at the tiny house. And I just found out this morning that that is going to start in 2 days. So this needs to get done today so I can get the grass cut tomorrow. So without further ado, let's get all that stuff back out here and get back to work. Okay, show you how the feet actually work. I'm going to run my drill all the way through. It's pre-drilled on this side and there's nothing on that side. That's just so whatever is here is here. If I would have pre-drilled everything, it would not work. I think I need to come, no, that's right. So I'm going to run the drill through. Well, first I'm going to put a clamp on here, run the drill through, get one of the bolts on, then get the other bolt on. Then I'll throw a few screws in there just for good measure, and that should do it. The reason for this is because everything is out of whack because of these blocks. The top needed to be completely adjustable, and the same thing for the bottom. But they're going to be riding on a nice concrete base, and this should stay good for as long as the stairway lasts. We have the height, the levelness, and the position locked in place at the top. And now we have the levelness locked in place at the bottom. The position of the stringers themselves will be set by the treads. They're going to stay right where they are. But what I need to do is add an L bracket from here down to the concrete. That'll keep the entire stairway from shifting. I don't know how that would happen, but it could. Just from running up and down the stairs bouncing a little bit, it could move its way, and we would have it touching on one side and wide open on the other, and we don't want that to happen. So got my little hammer drill and a heavily galvanized brackets and some tap cons, and we'll get that done. Okay, the base is totally secure. I can go up and down this pretty easy right now, but, well, it's a little harder going down. Okay, now I got to take these brackets off, put them on the next step, and start measuring. And again, I use these spacer blocks on either side, get a measurement. The biggest I can make the board is what I make it. Then I do the scribe, and I cut it over here, route it over here, and then fit it into place. It is really a pain in the butt, but if I would have went with just the exact same size treads and risers, this would have looked really, really nasty. Okay, let's get, wait a second. I gotta do the risers first, then start messing with this tread. Let's get those cut. Well, I think that's it for today. I gotta go get my level. Okay, let's see what we got. All right. Any more rain coming? Nope. I guess I'm gonna start working again. We got 3/4 of an inch of rain in 10 minutes. Unbelievable. Yeah, this is gonna dry out real quick. All right, back to work. All right, I think I got it under control. I got some cardboard here so I don't get mud all over my shoes and track it up the stairs as I work on that top part. And something to kneel on here. I think we're good to go. I'll just bring out the tools as I need them. And hopefully, like I said, I want to get this bottom tread on and that tread up there. If I can get that done, I'm good to go. Wow, what the heck? Got gravel that washed out through the gap right there. I'm gonna have to get that all plugged up so that doesn't happen anymore. I don't want gravel on the steps here. If it's not one thing, it's two. Okay, let's get going. I got a tiny little break in the weather, and I'm gonna show you what I got done. I got this almost done, but it's been raining for the last 2 days and I couldn't quite get it finished. I just have, well, actually just that bottom riser. That's all I got to do with the stairway, but I have to do a little bit of landscaping here as well. And like I said, I'm going to be building like a little deck up on the top, but for the most part, the stairway is done. Looks pretty nice. It's kind of hard to walk over here because of the mud. Okay, that's it. Yesterday, I had to work. I helped put in a 200-foot septic line from the tiny house to the other side of the main house there to the septic tank. So that's a pretty interesting video. That'll be on the other channel tomorrow. And when I wrap this up, I'll do a short or something to show the rest of it. And at some point, this is going to go up to a little greenhouse right behind where the cat is. And that landing up there, and then one more step up to ground level up there. Yeah, that is really nice. Beautiful. I'm not 100% sure what the next video is going to be, but I guarantee it's going to be interesting. I'll see you then.